We're in public session. So members of the Board of Trustees Committee on Governance, please respond present when you hear your name. Oh, here he is. There we go. Okay, please. Sorry, please respond present when you hear your name. Trustee Sunshine is the chair.
Present.
Trustee Ferrer, vice chair.
Here.
Trustee O'Donnell Tormey is the
Present.
Great. And Trustee Henry Berger. Henry's muted. Got
Here.
it, but we see you. Okay, we have a quorum. This public meeting of the Committee on Governance is now called to order pursuant to the New York State Legislature's recent extension of the suspension of required in-person meetings under the Open Meetings Law. This meeting is being held remotely via video conference with access to the public session available on the CUNY Board of Trustees website. A copy of the calendar and agenda of items is also available online at the CUNY Board of Trustees website. Additional items may be added during the meeting. As a reminder, please mute so we can ensure that everyone can hear. I will now take a roll call attendance for members of the Chancellery. Chancellor Matos Rodriguez, I saw you come in.
Present and ready for action.
General Counsel and Senior Vice Chancellor for Legal Affairs, Derek Davis.
Present.
It's all you, Ken.
All right, well, welcome to the inaugural meeting of the board's new governance committee. I'm delighted to be working with you all. I think, you know, in an institution like CUNY, it's been around for a while. Anything new causes a stir, but I think unanimously among the trustees, people were very enthusiastic about establishing this committee. Many of the ways we work as a board and how we interact with the many levels of CUNY have not been looked at for a long time. We intend to do some of that and to make everything we do as a board more efficient. We have 4 information items on the agenda that can help us plan our work. Information item 1A is a review of the committee charter. I'll turn it over to General Counsel and Secretary to present our committee charter.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here. Make sure I'm sharing the right document. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yep.
So this was the document that's the reso. And here's the actual charter. So this committee's charter is and not to read it to everyone, but it's really to assist the board in fulfilling your oversight of the university. And it will include reviewing any and looking at recommendations of policies and procedures that will help the quality, efficiency, and effectiveness of the board and how the board operates. It requires at least 3 and no more than 5 members. So you guys are right there at 4 members. And meetings and quorum, this is the usual, and that you guys have to meet at least 4 times per year, and that you have the authority to convene additional meetings as it may require, but a minimum of 4 times. And the presence of the majority of the appointed members shall constitute the quorum. And the responsibilities are really what Derek and I wanted to focus on today. And if you haven't had a chance to review them, we'll just quickly go through. And what we're really going to be focused on at first is a review and amendment of the university's bylaws, the manual of general policy, and any other governing documents. And we're also going to look at all of the committee charters. So there's a charter for this for every committee, many of which have not been looked at in a very, very long time. The audit committee would be the most recent one when it was established as a full committee, and that charter is actually fairly new from 2017, but none of the charters have really been looked at. And in fact, some of the bylaws, but in the manual of general policy in particular, the committees are codified from years and probably more than 20 years ago. So it's time to look at that. The committee will be looking at recommendations for expectations for trustees in terms of attendance and being prepared and how much participation there is. We have a very active board, which is great. So I don't think that's going to be a significant issue. The committee will also be responsible for coordinating and reviewing with the chair criteria for assessing the board's performance. And the same goes establishing, coordinating, and reviewing with the chair criteria for assessing the chancellor. The board will also, and this committee will look at any information and training reasonably necessary to continue education of all trustees on governance matters. So as it may happen, you guys may recommend, and Derek and I would be happy to facilitate conversations with governance experts in order to help keep the full board, not just the committee, educated on the latest issues in higher ed governance. And Derek and I have been working on a board orientation process, and I'm very, very pleased to say that we actually just finished the orientation of 2 new trustees, Trustee Palacio and Trustee Vivolo. We actually instituted a new process called a flipped orientation. And the flipped orientation required all the staff of the Chancellery to videotape presentations that were viewed by all the different, by the 2 trustees. And then we met and actually had an open dialogue after reviewing that. So rather than being lectured at, we were able to have a real open dialogue about all of the different work that's being done at the university. Now that that's complete yesterday, I will share all of the videos with the full board, if that's all right with everyone. And this way, everybody will have access to the same information that they received. The general counsel is working, will continue to work with you guys on overseeing and implementing the conflict of interest, the financial disclosures, and any other policies that this committee and the board would like to implement. Obviously, we have much of that prescribed by the state of New York. And then annually, we'll have to look at this charter and be sure that the committee makes a decision about whether it continues to be appropriate and adequate. And then the committees will look to make any changes as necessary. So that's it on that topic, on the charter. Ken.
Great. I've got to say there, and I think I speak for other members of the board, I know I do, that I'm on a number of other boards of nonprofit institutions, and it varies greatly with the amount of governance that goes into being a board member. CUNY is a very complicated place and very unusual, I guess. But now that I've gotten into this, and Gail and Derek and I had a good talk the other day in preparation for our first meeting, I'm even more enthusiastic about the existence of this committee. I mean, it should have happened a while ago, to be frank, but it's happening now, and I think we're going to be very aggressive and very serious about bringing all this really up to date and current and relevant. So here we are. The information about item 2C is a discussion of the board meeting schedule. Now, I'll take the liberty of something we did discuss in our preliminary talk. I think the board needs to add at least a meeting. I think the summer lab, there are emergency meetings. I mean, classes may not be in session, and forget the virtual world, but CUNY functions and there's summer school and everything like that. More than that, I think there's too big a lag, and hopefully we're going to be back in person soon for everything. But even if not, I think that's something that ought to be considered. I don't know. Should we have a discussion of that now, Gail? I'm sort of trying to follow the script here. You're muted.
Sure, that's fine. We can, since none of these are being voted on, if we want to just move on to the next topic, I can share my screen. And hopefully you can see the schedule of the meetings if you want to move on to that next.
Sure.
Okay, there we go. So I'm going to share this here. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Sorry, I'm muted. Okay, so here's our schedule. We meet 6 times a year. And 6 times an academic year, I should say, sorry. But we've had the need to meet more frequently, especially given a lot of the things that have been going on. And so I think, Ken, what you were recommending is that we add another meeting in the summer.
Correct.
Between the June and October.
Yeah, I think we've ended up meeting anyway for all kinds of emergencies, semi-emergency issues. I think that makes sense.
And if I might add from the operational side, I would like to support that sentiment to continue to explore that, because I think that for the reasons that Trustee Sunshine indicated, totally agreement. But I think it also that gap makes also for an extremely crowded last meeting in June and an extremely packed first meeting in October, that if there was another meeting there, the flow of the resolutions and some of those things also will be more smooth. So fully support exploring that idea, although I don't want to get to be unpopular for adding meetings over the summer.
I will note that, and obviously when we look at the bylaws, Derek and I will take and make a recommendation, but you guys can always meet and call a special meeting. And that's the way that we've been operating, or the executive committee, but we can codify and add an additional meeting. So we'll take a look at the calendar. And I don't think that will require any additional board approval, Derek, right? We can just go ahead and do that. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that calendar. Ken, do you want to move on to the next?
Sure. Information 2D is a discussion of committee restructuring. We want to discuss the restructuring of committees, including new charters for each committee, to be sure that our structure is keeping up with the needs of the university today. I think we should charge Gail and Derek with drafting recommendations and bringing them back to the committee for review, input, and approval. But today, I'd like any recommendations anybody has, and maybe we should review these recommendations at our meeting in February. I think in looking at all this, some committees are quite functional. In fact, are loaded with agenda items, and some oddly are not. And that alone requires some evaluation, it seems to me. Gail and Derek?
So I will share our current committees. Here we go. Go ahead, Derek. You want to?
No, I think Trustee Sunshine, when we met, and others noted that we have a number of committees, and the way topics are often generated, they are generated mainly operationally because things require board approval, but often things should come before a committee that may just need discussion and review that is supportive of the mission of the university. And so it was pointed out that the Student Affairs Committee often is not populated enough with topical items that for public session that might be of interest. So not only highlighting things that require approval, but highlighting so many positive aspects of the university that of ongoing events and projects that could be shared publicly with trustees and with our constituents.
Any discussion on that? What Derek talked about?
I've got to agree with that, not only in terms of the committees, but also the board, and maybe it's not within the current structure, but, board meetings and committee meetings, we go through our agenda, we hear, we vote, and that's the end of it. And there isn't just an opportunity for back and forth. Now, we've had a couple other sessions where we've had that opportunity, but it's not built into the structure. And, when we've done it, I found the back and forth to be very useful, even if there's no specific agenda item on for action. And building that into our structure, not only at the committee level, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, I think Henry crystallized it better than I did. It's much of what particularly in the public sessions, frankly, it's perfunctory. It's where the work is done in the committees, and the work is certainly done. We're not just voting blindly, but it's very mechanical. And I would like to beef that up and have, frankly, encourage discussion, even encourage controversy. A lot of what we're voting on is not so simple, but the action has happened either at committee level or not at a formal meeting. So I would like that to be part of the mission of what we're looking at here.
Well, I'll just say that when I did join the CUNY board, it was a board that was unlike any other not-for-profit board that I was on, because I found it so prescribed. And that I felt, especially, I guess, because it's a public session, all my other boards that's not public, and you can really voice your opinion and have controversy. But I think in this public setting, I was scared. What do I say? What if, it might upset the entire apple cart if I say something that I'm not supposed to say. So I don't know, there's that place in between that I think more recently we have more executive sessions where I feel the real discussions take place, and you can voice opinions and feel that, it's a place where you can have controversy. So I don't know how you incorporate that into the board meetings when they're so public that could cause harm to the organization if something is said that shouldn't be said. Maybe that's just me, but that's my perception as being on this board.
Well, I would be remiss, Trustee O'Donnell, to me if I didn't say there's nothing that cannot be said. We are at our bedrock an institution of free speech, and we encourage all trustees to be open and transparent, and we encourage that. I think of, and maybe what I should say, noting what our charge is, think of governance much like you would in bylaws. And I want to go back to something Trustee Ferreira said at the opening of the meeting. It can be so boring and mundane, but I think of governance, maybe it's because I'm a wonk as a lawyer. It's an opportunity when you think of where we've come in everything else in life, like transportation and cars. Cars didn't have GPS 20 years ago, and now every car has GPS. Governance is an opportunity for the Board of Trustees to look at its operations and for the administration to look at itself operationally and make sure that we are at the forefront of our leadership in governance as a Board of Trustees and exercising your fiduciary obligations of duty of care, duty to exercise business judgment, and duty of loyalty. So it gives us an opportunity to sort of just kick the tires again. And we're starting with bylaws and committees. But as we move on through this process, we will see other things, maybe better practices at other institutions that we would want to adopt. And Trustee Sunshine will lead us to that promised land to get us there.
Well, I don't know about the promised land. I'm getting a little too biblical here, but from my, I also look. I want to take what Jill. I heard you loud and clear. I don't know that I would admit, or it's true that I felt intimidated, but the structure of the regular public board meetings tends to be perfunctory, except at the times, and it hasn't happened for a bit, when people were yelling at us, where there was disagreement about student fees and there's no secret. A lot of us on the board totally agreed with students and others who were yelling at us, but our role is what it is. I thought that was kind of great, and we're a university and everything about us is free speech, but the sort of mechanical way that we're voting because we have to on what the committees did otherwise is not only it's not exciting, we could be doing much more. And that I would like that to be part of what we're looking at here. And if nothing else, it's off topic of the resolutions, a free discussion of issues that matter. There are no shortage of issues out there, but it would mean a restructuring of the traditional way the regular public board meetings are set up.
And I'd just like to add that from my perspective, that's why we've been also trying to create a space for the briefings, right? In which, it's a conversation among a couple of trustees, but it allows a lot more time for questions, for in-depth. And I know that for the chancellor's team, it's been a great opportunity to engage the trustees even more and in depth. So that's not a structural component, but I think very much in this line of the maximum flow of information and that engagement. So.
I by the way, I agree. Speaking for myself, I think those sessions have been terrific, and I found them very helpful and very enlightening. But of course, they're private. I was speaking about the public nature of what we do, and anything else? There are no other agenda items. Does anybody want to raise other issues before we, send really Gail and Derek back to really do some great legwork? And the next meeting, we'll have a whole lot to vote on, I would hope. So,
Can I add
Thank God for Derek and Gail.
can I add something?
sure.
And the point was made early in the meeting that our bylaws, among other things, haven't been looked at in a long time. And when you look at them closely, they were really written for a different age.
Correct.
I'll just leave it at that.
That kind of summarizes the existence of this committee. I mean,
Well, yeah, there were, in so many ways, some of these committee structures are inadequate. For example, we don't really talk about procurements per se and how we deal with them. And, it's just not addressed because frankly, this was all 20 years ago at the CUNY board, these were perfunctory conversations. Nobody ever talked about it.
exactly.
A budget? What are you kidding me? Nobody ever did that. In fact, I found it interesting that it was what the CUNY board did once upon a time was adopt the budget by implication. Now, I don't know what that means. It's a very, very interesting and artful invention of a process. But, enacting the budget is the most important thing an organization does. It's a reflection of its values. Do it in a transparent way is important. I'm heartened that in the current description of fiscal affairs, we talk about the joining of the operating and capital budgets. That wasn't always the case. And it is, and that's a good thing, but we're going to have to look at how this develops in down the road. For example, this has an impact. What we do, capital and operating, has an impact on construction. I don't think we even have a committee that reviews our construction function. CUCF, it seems to be dangling out there, but I don't know what board oversight of their function currently exists or can exist. So those are things that I think it would be good for us to examine in the course of tightening up our bylaws, and I'm happy that we're doing it, and commend Chancellor, our counsel and secretary, and as well as you, Mr. Chairman, to take on this task because it's more complicated than it seems.
Yeah, this is not simple. I got to say, I've been on several committees. I am on several committees. The one that functions, I think, to be frank, the best, and this most robust discussion is fiscal affairs, is Trustee Ferrer's committee. We really get into it there, and it's a much different. It's far less perfunctory. I mean, and obviously, you're comparing apples and oranges on some level, but to me, that I don't know, Henry, if you agree, that's to me that's functioning at the level that it should.
Well, Henry has always made it interesting.
Henry does make it interesting, but we don't like shy. This is Kansas. This is New York.
No shrinking violets here.
Anybody have anything else to add? If not, we're going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you all. Thanks.